Hello, welcome to Tea and Conversations. Now, this is not the video I promised you in my last video. It's not a conversation, unfortunately. Schedules and the moon and the stars just haven't lined up quite right yet for that to happen. So I'm going to go into a little more detail about what type of things we're going to discuss on this channel. I want to kind of keep the momentum going now that we've put out the first video. So you probably gathered from my book, you haven't gone and gotten it yet. It is at Amazon and it is available on my website. Well, the link to Amazon is on my website, and I'll put a graph up here again so you know where to go. And you can read it either paperback or electronically. And there's also an audio version if you'd like to do that as well. Anyway, so in my book, if you have picked it up, you'll know, and kind of from the title too, it talks about abuse. And I mentioned in the last video that it is an account of the abuse I went through as a child and into my adult years, the emotional abuse. And I am going to be talking about that on this channel. I feel it's important that we have discussions, continual discussions about it, so that the topic is brought into the forefront, is brought into the light, so that perpetrators know we're talking about it. We're not afraid to talk about it. So if they attempt it and are thinking of attempting it, maybe, just maybe in the back of their minds, they'll hesitate and not do it because they'll know that it's going to get talked about. And that's, I think, part of the powerful thing it is about talking and getting our message out there and getting our stories out there. It's to take away the power from perpetrators and pedophiles and this evilness that is done to innocent children, to innocent people all around, as far as not only child abuse, but domestic violence and any type of traumatic experience that is a violation of your personal human rights and just, rights as a human. And that's what we need to focus on. So we'll be talking about the different forms of abuse. Many people don't know and don't realize that how they were treated is actually abuse. And so when they have maybe an extreme reaction to something, they go from 0 to 100 in anger about something that seemingly is small. They don't understand why. And most likely it's because they've been triggered. Something was said, something was done, and a very intense emotion was triggered because it's similar to the trauma they went through. And a lot of people don't understand that, and don't recognize that. So we're going to talk about that. Now, speaking of triggers, not every video will contain abuse specifics. But when they do, at the very beginning of the video, so you can decide whether or not to continue, I will let you know what we're going to be discussing in case you feel that maybe you might be triggered and you're not ready to go there yet. And that's perfectly fine. We're all on this journey at different points, and there's no right or wrong. It's just about your personal story, your personal journey of healing. As long as you're on that road of healing, that's what's important. And that's what we're going to focus on, is getting to the point of healing. But I need to talk about the things that happen along the way. And I believe that that is just as powerful as talking about the end result, which is healing. So let me just say something about triggers. Triggers are not necessarily bad. Okay, they may be severe, and that's what we have to be aware of, right? Is what level we're at. But triggers are a way our mind tells us that there's still more to be processed. That's what it is. It's a message from our brain saying, this still needs to be processed. So we don't have to fear triggers. And I think it's just a matter of more understanding them. And there are tools that your therapist can give you to process triggers when they happen. I talk about this a lot in my book. You can read my firsthand experience with triggers, and I even go into some specific triggers and how I handled them based on working with my therapist and my counselor and the things that she would encourage me to do should a trigger be presented and be brought up. And let me just tell you, I am much healthier today because I've been able to process triggers when they happen instead of being debilitated by them. And I believe that that's a huge part of progress on your healing journey, when you can understand and recognize a trigger and then not cower away from it. That's what I used to do. I used to suppress them and just not go there. But after a while, it got to the point where they just continue to pop up, and I need to be able to do something different. And that's when I discovered, oh yes, I need to process them. So however that might be, for me it was journaling and it was talking. That's how I processed them. And I think that that's a very healthy thing to do, and it helps to move you along on your healing journey. I am certain that this will come up again in future videos. Triggers are a big part of PTSD. PTSD is a big part of all kinds of trauma and abuse. So no matter what we discuss, triggers will probably come up. Triggers can happen even if it's not an abuse situation, even if it's, I know someone who had eaten something just before he had a heart attack. And so then every time he'd go to eat that one thing, all of the memories of the heart attack would flood in. So, and that was something out of everyone's control, but it was a traumatic experience. So triggers can happen, and it's just, again, it's a matter of understanding them and then being able to process through them. And now I'm going to take a sip of tea, just because I can. All right, so triggers we'll be discussing. We're also going to be discussing mental health. Again, I talk about in my book my personal experience with depression and anxiety. I have at least one chapter, maybe even two, where I talk about not only like my experience with it, like what happened, but also what I learned through it. And and I think that that's a really important point to make right here. I'm going to just stop and make this point, that it's one thing to hear about the experiences and hear about what happened. And I think that's important. But more important, I feel, is to get to a point where we can learn from the experience and do better and do different. I think that's where we break the cycle. Because, we didn't ask for this. None of us did. None of us who are survivors of abuse, of trauma, asked for it. Yet we are a community of people who are trying to work through it and heal from it. That's why I feel like it's important to talk about what I learned and what you learned through your healing process. I think that encourages and it inspires others. And that's what it's about. Another way to diminish I guess, this evil, and it would be wonderful if we could abolish it. that would be wonderful. And who knows, maybe we will. All right, so we're also going to be discussing divorce. I know that seems maybe a little out in left field, but let me tell you this. Recently, I've had several people close to me that have gone through a divorce. And having been in a position of observing the process, I started to think, we all have heard the word divorce. We all know that it overall is a difficult thing. It's hard. But I don't know that we all agree or have been able to apply the word traumatic to divorce. That's what I've observed. Divorce is traumatic. It's traumatic for the kids. It's traumatic for the adults. And I don't know that that's talked about enough. And it's not about, my wanting to talk about it is not about stopping people from getting a divorce. That would be nice too. But again, it's when something happens, right? The healthy way to process through it. And that's what I want to talk about. So I've already have someone lined up who has agreed to share her experience. And I'm kind of looking forward to that, to see where that branches off into, and what type of healing that's going to bring to not only her, but to many, 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 many who have gone through divorce. I want to discuss as well on this channel what it's like to have relationships after abuse and trauma. Now, I know for me, my abuse happened in my family of origin. And so that came with, and again, talk about it in here. And so that came with a lot of dysfunction and in relationships. So we never learned how to be healthy in relationships. And now I've learned through healing, through a lot of hard work in my marriage, and some work that was done with friends as well. I've learned how to be healthier, setting boundaries. Setting boundaries is a big one. There's probably some other things I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head, but setting boundaries is a big one. And then there's all kinds of other feelings around, not feeling like if someone says no, it's because they don't like you, or, just different thought patterns that come from a dysfunctional way of learning how to be in relationship with others. That, I'm sure, is this whole topic is going to come up in many of the conversations, because that's really, I think, at the root of a lot of it, and is at the root of healing. Okay, so we're gonna talk a lot about that and the work that it takes, and the successes that come with that. All of this is rewarding, and that's what I want with all of this, is that it's rewarding and it's worth it. And again, like I've said in the first video, you can have these conversations and be healthier for it. So, okay. Lastly, be careful how I put that down. This mic picks up a lot. So lastly, you need to know that I am not a professional counselor, a therapist, a psychologist, or a psychiatrist. I am just wanting to share my experience, again, the things that I learned, and share them with you. Because I know that when along the way, when others would share their journey with me, share their struggles with me, share their victories, their progress with me, all of it helped me to continue on my journey. And that's what I want to do for others. I believe it's still not talked about enough. And so we need to talk about all of it. And that's what we're going to do with these videos. So once again, I hope for now you'll join me, you'll subscribe and comment. Please feel free to comment, because I can begin conversations just with the comments alone, and see where that takes us as well. And it'll help me to know where you're at and what we might be able to discuss to help you. Ask me questions, and but just know, as soon as schedules align, I do want to have guests on here and have conversations, and I really believe you will glean a lot from these conversations. Okay? So until next time, I hope that you will continue to join me here at Tea and Conversations, and you'll make yourself a cup of tea, and you'll share your journey one sip at a time. See you next time.